NBA playoff time. I'm going to preview each and every round. NBA betting notes and predictions. Grandmaster Handicapper Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com. We enter the NBA playoffs on a 31-11 NBA run. Of course, our famed bounce-back angle continues to roll in the postseason. It is the better-looking sister of the zigzag angle. By the way, the blind zigzag went 22-42 last year. Its worst season ever. But our famed bounce back just continues to roll. Visit Joe Duffy's picks at OffshoreInsiders.com for the top picks in the handicapping industry. Let's get straight to it. The Warriors and the Spurs. Golden State, minus 1250 to win the series. San Antonio at plus 850. These are from the approved sportsbooks at OffshoreInsiders.com. Of course, the Spurs will likely be without Kawhi Leonard, though there is some possibility he could make his dramatic return. I think Greg Popovich is being Greg Popovich. Most of the tea leaves say that he won't play, but there's still some sources that say, Kawhi Leonard could possibly come back. And that's clearly the key to the series. Now, assuming Leonard does not make a dramatic comeback, Kevin Durant matches up well. I don't see how anybody could stop him inside. He's going to be their feature player. Golden State without Steph Curry for, looks like, the beginning of the NBA playoffs. At least, most sources would say he's much more likely to return than Leonard is. But they've dropped 10 out of 17 entering the postseason. Spurs are the fourth best defensive team in the NBA. Keep in mind, though, ice-cold favorites are generally a good playoff bet. So the fact that Golden State is slumping may not necessarily be a bad thing. Of course, it's all on LaMarcus Aldridge for the Spurs, barring, as we said, that dramatic comeback. The Spurs, most unlucky team in the postseason. Now, let me explain the luck factor, because I'm going to allude to that a few times. I think Ken Pom was the first to come up with it in college basketball. Then I use Team Rankings, one of the many sites I use for my handicapping. They have come up with the luck factor in other sports. Essentially, a team that wins a majority of their close games, the theory is they've been pretty lucky. They've had some good fortune, and maybe they're a little bit overvalued. They're not as good as their straight-up record. While the unlucky teams have had some bad fortune, and that they are better than their straight-up record. Now, that being said, I'll report, you decide. Others would say, look, in the NBA playoffs, teams that have won their close games are the teams that you do want to bet on. Anyway, the Spurs are, as we said, the most unlucky team in the NBA. 5-9 in games decided by 5 or less, among other factors that go into that luck factor. Golden State, though, 16th luckiest team, so they haven't been substantially better. Golden State, the second worst against the spread margin team in the NBA, missing covering by an average of 2.5 points per game. But favorites with a bad against the spread margin are actually a pretty good bet. Do think Golden State wins in 5. Of course, that could change, and that's one of the remember what I said. I don't like to make big futures bets because I do not want it to impede my ability to make game-to-game adjustments, and especially here, what if Kawhi Leonard comes back before Steph Curry, etc. So these are predictions. They're not actual bets, because I like to start with a clean slate, even psychologically, each and every game. All right, the Raptors and the Wizards. Toronto minus 650, Washington plus 500. Tough matchup for the Raptors. John Wall back for the Wizards. He played only 41 games this year, so the Wizards are probably better than they are definitely better than the record shows. He closed out the season with 28 and 29-point games, had 50 assists in 4 games. They're clearly better than the 8th seed. Toronto has had their share of playoff struggles. Remember the old adage, 90% of the game's half mental. If the Wizards can all of a sudden steal game 1, this could be very interesting. Toronto a plus 2.3 against the spread margin. Some of you know that as the sweat barometer, but favorites in the postseason with an excellent against the spread margin are pretty good go against plays. The Wizards in 7. Yep, I'm predicting the upset. But again, this doesn't mean, who knows? It's quite possible after making my game-to-game adjustments, if they're in the 7th game, it's quite possible I could be going with Toronto as a favorite. So hence kind of my disclaimer that I do not like to make the futures bets. These are predictions rather than actual bets. Promo code at mybookie.ag for the largest sign-up bonus, Duffy, D-U-F-F-Y. You deposit $1,000 right now. You'll have $1,500 to bet with if you enter the promo code Duffy, D-U-F-F-Y. The Sixers and the Heat, certainly the most interesting of any of the first-round matchups. Well, simply because the 76ers are the most intriguing team. They're minus 470, Miami plus 395. Joel Embiid didn't want to completely count himself out. He looks like, though, he's doubtful for Game 1. Sixers enter on a 16-game winning streak to only 3 were playoff teams, but half of those wins were without Embiid. They're 27-5 straight up their last 32. One of those X factors, Markelle Fultz, did close out the year with a triple-double. He's shown he can contribute. You know, he's got the funky-looking foul shot, but he can be a contributor. So is he going to be an X factor, and can the Sixers make a great deep run? Favorites in the postseason, again with excellent against the spread margins, though, are generally go against teams. Do think the Sixers will win in 6, but of course, you know, based on injury information, if Joel Embiid winds up missing the entire series, all of a sudden that prediction, you know, is a wash. And then again, if he shows up for Game 1 and is able to play, you know, 35, 40 minutes, this could be a sweep. Portland and New Orleans. Portland minus 205, New Orleans plus 175. Portland's dropped 7 or 12 games down to the postseason, but ice-cold favorites are a good bet. Of course, the Pels with Anthony Davis fits into my famed Adrian Barbeau angle that in the postseason it pays to be top-heavy. And New Orleans has a guy, of course, Anthony Davis, who could completely take over the game. 30.1 points per game, 11.9 rebounds, 3.2 blocks since Boogie Cousins. Old Boogie had a season-ending injury on January 26. Can True Holiday and Rajon Rondo, 2 seasoned veterans, can they come up big on defense against Lillard and McCallum? If so, yeah, we could certainly see an upset here. New Orleans, the number 2 over team in the NBA, and the number 1 over team of all playoff teams. They've won over this year by an average of 2.9 points per game. Looking for the upset here, New Orleans in 7. Now the Celtics and the Bucks. Boston, minus 150. Milwaukee, plus 130. Of course, the C's, they went all out. This was going to be a year where they were, you know, going to be all in and contend for the NBA title. But, boy, started on opening day. I believe that Gordon Hayward injury was opening night, was it not? That horrible injury he had. And then Kyrie Irving, of course, out for the playoffs. So, suffice to say, Boston is not as good as their seeding. Not that they had Hayward this year at all for any significance. But Milwaukee, with Giannis, certainly has the star player who can carry a team, the old Adrian Barbeau theory there. Milwaukee is 6th in transition scoring, while the Celtics, though, 6th in transition defense. Milwaukee just 11-12 straight up entering the postseason, so they're ice cold. Boston, though, 15-8 entering the postseason. Boston 3rd, but Milwaukee the 6th luckiest team in the NBA. We explained that earlier. Milwaukee minus 2 against the spread margin. Favorites, though, with bad against the spread margins. A pretty good bet. Look, this could be the mild upset, obviously, at plus 130, minus 150. Not going to be a massive upset, but could be an upset still. I think all in all, Boston in 7. We will take a look at that Cleveland and Indiana. Cleveland and Indiana. Cleveland minus 650, Indiana plus 500. Think some unders in the series as the Cavs are terrible during the regular season in defense, but just like last year, they will turn it up in the postseason. Always say intensity is turned up big time in the postseason, and intensity shows up first and foremost in defense. So as bad as the Cavs were in the regular season on defense, look for them to be the most improved defensive team in the NBA playoffs. That is as close to being a lock as you're going to get. Pacers do play an up-tempo offense, and that's, you know, built better for the regular season matchups, but I'm just telling you, folks, the Kings' minutes are going to increase. Cleveland's going to play a lot better defense. Larry Nance, one of the most important players in the league, coming off of the bench. A heck of a player for Cleveland. Remember, King James, his teams have won the Eastern Conference Final every season since 2011. Now, again, Indiana 3-1 straight up in the series, but I just flat out told you the up-tempo pace of the Pacers matched up pretty well against a Cleveland team that didn't really put much effort on defense during the regular season. That will not be the case in the postseason. It looked like Oladipo really wore down in the down the stretch for the Pacers. 2 luckiest teams in the NBA, by the way, based on the luck factor. So no really edge there. If you had like the luckiest team in the NBA against the 23rd luckiest team in the NBA, you might, you know, that's where we would lean towards the 23rd is how we use it. But that's the 2 luckiest teams in the NBA according to the luck factor. Cleveland, the worst against the spread margin team in the NBA, minus 3.4 points per game. They failed to cover this year. But again, favorites with bad against the spread margins, a pretty good bet in the NBA playoffs. Do look for Cleveland, the sweep here. Cleveland in 4. And the best when it comes to technical handicapping, Stevie Vincent, offshoreinsiders.com. Follow us on Twitter at offshoreinsider. Oklahoma City and Utah. OKC minus 140, Utah plus 120. Utah, the best defense down the stretch. Will Jazz rookie Donovan Mitchell do well in the spotlight? He was a key player for them this year, but he is a rookie. And there are certainly studies, not necessarily gambling studies, but studies out there that I've seen that, key experience is very important in the NBA postseason. Utah won 17 out of 22 to finish, so they are red hot. Of course, Westbrook outstanding for Oklahoma City. Paul George is one of these guys that when OKC got him, thought he'd be much more valuable in the playoffs. A little surprised that he averaged 36. I would have had the under there. Did not expect him to play in 79 games and average 36.6 minutes, but good for him. I mean, we talked about Hayward with that freak injury, reminded me of obviously Paul George. Great to see Paul George finding a little bit of fountain of youth, and you would think that he never had that serious injury. Not a huge Carmelo Anthony guy, but you know what? He's got talent. Maybe he'll turn it up a notch in the postseason. This is a dangerous team. Rudy Gobert, he must make Westbrook, when he takes it inside, he's got to make him pay. He's got to be physical inside. Otherwise, Westbrook will dominate, taking it to the rim. Jazz, second most unlucky team in the postseason, but just behind OKC. Jazz, the best spread margin in the NBA, plus 2.6. Favorite in the postseason with excellent against the spread margins, though. A pretty good go against. OKC, -1 against the spread margin. Favorites with bad against the spread margins are a good bet. Now, -1 is right about what we would define, because over 80 games, that is a pretty bad margin, but they're on the cusp of fitting into that angle. Oklahoma City in 5 is our prediction, and you can bet this at mybookie.ag, promo code Duffy. Now we'll take a peek at the Rockets and the Timberwolves. Houston -3,000, Minnesota plus 1,500. Jimmy Butler's back from Minnesota after playing in only 59 games, averaging 22.2 points per game. So they're a better team than their record shows. Meanwhile, the Rockets without Maba Omate, I think I got that pretty close to right. Luka Maba Omate, likely out for the first round. Heck of a defensive player. Karl Anthony Towns must explode for Minnesota to have a chance here. With Butler, Towns, Wiggins, and Teague, I think this team underachieved. Houston is much better than their record showed, and with Jimmy Butler back, they certainly are. I'm not going to predict Minnesota to win this, but I think this is great value. You got them at 15-1. That's pretty damn tempting. Rockets are the top under team in the playoffs at -3.6. They were the third best under team overall, but as I said, tops of any playoff team. But with a low total, big under teams generally are a big over bet, so keep an eye on that. The Rockets in 6 is my official prediction. Where you get vetted, tested, approved sportsbooks at offshoreinsiders.com and the best handicappers. Make sure you follow us on the social media, especially Twitter at Offshore Insider. You can find us, of course, so a lot of you are watching this on YouTube, but give us a like if you're watching this on YouTube. We're on Periscope TV, Offshore Insider. Just follow us on all the social media. The best thing to do is go to offshoreinsiders.com. We have social media, as you'll see at the top of the page. Click on that, and it's got direct links to our social media. Please, if you like this information, literally like it. The experts tell us that will help us in the search engines, and it's the best way. Well, it's not the best way. It's one of the best ways to tell us you love this information. You want more free information like that. Of course, you want to buy Joe Duffy's picks, or you set up an account at any one of the sports books, and if it's mybookie.ag, use that promo code Duffy for the biggest sign-up bonus in the industry.